What's up, you guys? So for a while now, I've been using Emacs, as a lot of you guys know, and one of the big things that drew me to Emacs was the ability to kind of integrate everything together, as I've mentioned in my previous video. And one of the biggest things that made me think that this was actually possible was the Emacs Application Framework. Now, you're probably wondering, what exactly is the Emacs Application Framework? Well, the idea of it's pretty simple. It acts as a simple middleware in order to interface Qt applications, specifically PyQt, so Python Qt applications with Emacs. Now, just a little background on PyQt. PyQt is basically the Python library and the way for Python to interface with the Qt framework. If you guys aren't familiar with Qt, a good example of a program that I used to use all the time, and I still kind of use from time to time, is the Qt web browser. Uses Qt, as well as the entire KDE desktop actually relies on Qt. And there's a lot of other things. Pretty much anything that's KDE relies on Qt, as well as, I believe, the Deepin desktop and a bunch of other things rely on Qt. It's a very popular front-end framework. Now, the big thing about this is that since it connects Emacs with these different libraries and languages, is that it opens up the playing field a lot more to what Emacs can do. The thing is that since these things are able to run separate from Emacs, it gets away from Emacs's biggest limitation in the long run, which is it not allowing for multi-threading in Emacs Lisp. So since the applications, if you want to call them that, interface with Emacs are actually running externally and are running in their own process, they won't actually interfere with Emacs. Now, that statement comes with a tiny asterisk, and that is mostly due to the fact that Emacs still has to be able to pass these messages back and forth. The idea is very simple. Basically, all the keyboard interface and everything goes through Emacs, and then it's passed down through some proxy functions. And then all the user interface side of moving the mouse around and all of what is being displayed in your Emacs buffer is handled by the backend of Qt Python. So in the end, this framework ends up with its own pros and cons, and we'll get into some of the other pros and cons as we go through the video. But as a result, since it allows you to use Python, one of the most popular programming languages, as well as Qt, a very mature, developed, cross-platform framework, it allows you to basically open up the floodgates to what developers can work on Emacs packages, as well as what you can actually do. Now, the big thing is that at the moment, this depends on X. So currently, chances are that you're not really going to be running this on Windows or anything like that. But in the long run, they do want to make it cross-platform and also work on Wayland. Now, another alternative to this kind of approach is Xwidgets that a lot of people will mention. And this actually, I believe, depends on a lot of how Xwidgets works. But the big idea behind it is that this is very different from Xwidgets, because instead of acting as a way to basically put an X window within your buffer as its own element, this is actually taking over the whole buffer itself and passing these messages back and forth. At least that's my understanding. If you guys have a better understanding of this and would be willing to give a better explanation, be happy to see it. Throw it down in the comments below and enlighten me and enlighten the rest of us. Now, in addition to a lot of how this works, it adds a lot of different Qt functionality that we get. And one of the best ones out there is the fact that it adds Qt Web Engine, which is what Qt browser uses, and it's basically a very stripped down version of Chromium, and it's mostly just the blank web engine, which is really powerful because it allows Emacs to have its own web browser within it that can fully display web pages. Honestly, as far as I've seen, it's been more effective than I've seen it working with Nixt. It does have its limitations. We'll get into that further on in the video, but I find it to be pretty well-rounded and actually able to do pretty much anything I could ever need. Once again, that comes with an asterisk because there are some things that it still really can't do like at all, and because of that, you can't use it for these use cases. Now, in addition to offering a web browser, it offers a huge array of different applications, and we'll just take a quick peek right now to look at the actual web page, and you guys can kind of see its multiple applications, and it offers even more functionality than just the applications themselves. Now, hopping over to the web browser, yes, this web browser that we're looking at right now is actually the Emacs Application Framework's web browser. Now, something you'll notice is that since my Emacs is transparent, my actual browser is transparent. So that is something to keep in mind. So maybe you guys who use transparency might not really like this because it can make things a bit harder to see. Just keep that in mind. Now, going further down through the actual functionality, you'll see the page offers a bunch of stuff. It has a nice little logo, and it shows off some of the applications. So it's got a browser, a PDF viewer, music player, file manager, a bunch of that sort of stuff. You'll also notice that there's this big list of different things, and we'll show off most of these. Some of these I won't really show off because they are pretty time consuming. There's a bunch of applications, and there's actually a really good talk that goes over the functionality and why the original creators came up with the idea. But the biggest reason was to put everything in Emacs, as we all want to do. So that's pretty much one of the biggest reasons that it exists. Now, it gives a lot of outlining of the installation. We can go over the installation in a bit, but for now we won't go too far into it. It's fairly straightforward if you're on a pretty mainstream distro like Arch or probably Ubuntu. I've heard it even works with Nixt, but I haven't actually double checked, so I could be wrong. And here's this nice little breakdown. Now, the cool thing about this is that since these actual windows, these applications are running as just a buffer, is that you get all the same functionality. In fact, something that you can't do with EXWM, which is what I use right now, and it's basically EXWM is just a window manager for Emacs, but the big thing is that you can't have two windows in the same place at once. Now, this is not the case with Emacs Application Framework. Here we go. I have side by side the same browser. It will scroll together, but this is something that you can't do in EXWM. For example, if I just launch Qt browser, I launch this, no matter what I do, I can't make a split of this same window. It'll just show a different buffer. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and show off some of the most important and killer apps that you get from Emacs Application Framework, mostly the web browser, because I think that offers a lot of functionality. The biggest one being that you can also use JavaScript now in Emacs. I'm not a JavaScript developer, but I know a lot of people are, and that does open up a lot of functionality, whether you like it or not. There hasn't really been a way up until now to really take advantage of JavaScript in Emacs. Like I said before, you could have maybe done something with X widgets, but that's kind of a big headache to handle. And with something like this, it offers a bit more functionality and simplifies it a bit more. So this is my current configuration with EAF. Just to simplify things, I'm just going to go ahead and run you through it. First off, we have this little use package right here. If you guys aren't aware of use package, I recommend looking into it. I'm not really going to go into how it breaks down because I think most people know how to use package. First thing is using use package, Quelpa use package. Quelpa is basically a way to allow Emacs to automatically pull from GitHub or any external place to basically install applications from, or Emacs packages. The idea is pretty simple, and the main reason that I mention it is because of the fact that EAF is not actually in any of the standard Emacs repositories. So because of that, you'll have to install it using Quelpa, and this is just a really simplified way to do it. Just going to the actual installation, you'll want to uncomment this. I'll put this whole thing in the description for you guys, but this right here, this is basically telling it how to install EAF using Quelpa, and so basically it tells it how to install it. We give it a nice load path to where to install the package that we've installed. And then we put all this stuff in the init section. This basically gives it the Emacs package dependencies that it needs. And then finally, once we're done with that, we get into the actual configuration. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove some of the stuff that doesn't really matter. Pretty much none of this matters, actually. I think we can remove pretty much all that can go away. So there we go. This is pretty much all you'll end up actually needing. I'll put this in the description instead of my whole long version of it. But anyways, so you can just Control X, Control E to execute this. I already have Quelpa use package installed, and then you can just do Control X, Control E. And this will basically pull from Quelpa and do all the extra stuff that you need to. And then the only thing that is left is to do meta x EAF install dependencies. And this will use your package manager, if it can figure that out, to install it for you. Otherwise, you'll have to install the dependencies manually, which is quite a pain. That's kind of nice that it actually tries to use your native package manager rather than doing it all itself. So now I'm just going to go back. There we go. There we go. Now we're back to the original setup that I had. So pretty straightforward for the install. Now, once you've installed EAF, you can actually try it out. So first thing you can do, EAF browser, open browser with history. And when you click that, it will give you a bunch of options on what you can open based on your history. I'm just going to go ahead and go to this website. Now, when I open it up, it will actually put me in a dark mode, depending on my theme. Now, sometimes I find that this tends to break every once in a while, but it's pretty powerful, and it gives you a really nice way to get the functionality that you'd expect. There we go. So now this is a pretty complex website. It's got all this JavaScript stuff going on, and it's just handling it perfectly fine. without any issues. I can even click on everything and it works just as you'd expect. Now, just now I was scrolling with my mouse, but you can actually scroll with keys. So now that I've got screen key running, you guys can see what I'm pressing. So we can also move around with the keyboard, so using the standard keys that you would expect in Emacs. It actually comes with evil functionality built in, so if you guys want to use JK, you can move around as you'd expect with that. I think you can use Shift H to go back, Shift L to go forward, or something like that. You can also use Alt B to go back in history, and Alt F to go back forward in history. So let's just click on something here. Wait for that to load a little bit. It isn't exactly the fastest, as you'll find. There we go, so we can do Alt B. Oh, still not wanting to, there we go. Alt B takes us back to what we expect, and then Alt F to go forward. As I said before, the actual color scheme changing that it's doing is not very stable. It tends to sometimes just give me the light version of web pages instead, which isn't the worst, but it's kind of a pain. It just shocks you and you're like, ah, my eyes. So keep that in mind. Now, the key bindings are pretty straightforward. You can actually also use something pretty interesting, which is meta E. You guys can't really see this. Let's pull this up a bit. There you go. So now I can enter some stuff. So hello there. Then I can do Control C, and it will actually enter that in there. So once again, meta E, and then let's just make it so you guys can see this. Hello there. And then Control C, and it will enter it in again. You also have this sort of cute browser or any of the different ways of clicking on things by doing meta S, and this will highlight all of this, so I can say S, enter, and then it will click on that for me, as you'd expect, and then I can do all the same sort of stuff with that. But as you can see, there's a bit of a delay, which is kind of a pain. Most of the time, it's not a huge deal, and it does add a lot of functionality, and I don't really mind the delay too much because it's not like I'm really using my web browser very much. Now, just going to go ahead and let's go to YouTube. And so we're on YouTube, which is once again a very JavaScript heavy site, but it seems to be handling it pretty well. All that stuff loaded relatively quick. Let's go ahead and click on a video. Will the video play? Let's find out. And there we go. The video played, no problem at all. Playing at full speed, everything like that. Now you can full screen videos and everything like that.
I think we can recreate the famous...
Pretty much everything you'd expect. I gotta get off here so I don't get in trouble. Pretty straightforward, and you can still do all the same meta S, all that sort of stuff that you'd expect. So pretty cool. And this is just, once again, just an Emacs buffer, so you can split, you can copy the link if you want with meta slash, we'll copy the link. Pretty straightforward, and you can kill a buffer. New windows act as new buffers, so if you middle click on something, it will open it as a new buffer, which can be pretty helpful. So say, for example, if I wanted to middle click on this, and then I have a whole another separate window right next to it, which is pretty powerful, all that sort of stuff. So pretty cool. So you guys kind of get the idea of how the browser is. It's nothing too crazy. You still get Control S for that sort of searching functionality. It's not super great. Sometimes the focus gets lost, which is kind of a pain. Kind of acts the way that you'd expect if you guys are used to searching with iSearch and Emacs. Now, while the main goal of this video was to kind of just show off the power that you get from the actual web browser, let's get a bit more into the actual other applications that come with it, because some of them are pretty cool. So the first one I wanted to show off was the actual video player. So a lot of the time, EAF will actually act as a fallback. So you can actually set it to act as your web browser if you open up a link in Emacs, which is pretty awesome. And another thing it comes with is a video player.
At least that's my understanding.
So there we go, watching a video right now, as you can see. Let's go ahead and pause that. Watching a video, as you can see, it plays perfectly fine. You can move forward and backward in history, all that sort of stuff, and it just once again runs as a buffer. So pretty straightforward. Now can go ahead and kill that. So that's our video player. Now we also have a camera. I don't know what camera how it's gonna handle this. Might not want me to use the camera, but I'll oh, there we go. So the camera is not super fast, as you can see. It's using my built-in camera, but as you guys can see, it functions. So that's pretty cool, and you can take pictures with it and everything. Once again, the background is still kind of weird because, as you guys know, it once again absorbs the transparency that you have on Emacs. So not very good there. It comes with a bunch of stuff. You can actually do EAF, and it will list a bunch of things. Open terminal. So this actually gives you yet another terminal in Emacs. It's actually pretty functional, fully featured, sorry, is what I meant to say. Can do everything that you'd expect. So let's just do htop, and that will open up htop, and you get all the same keys that you would expect to work in htop. Pretty responsive and everything. Nothing too crazy. Oh, that's another thing that you get. You also get EAF. So after that, we also have PDF viewer and images, and an office viewer, which is pretty cool, I think. So just going back to, let's go to pictures. Let's just open up this image. So here we go. Here's the image. Here's the image viewer. It's okay. It allows you to zoom in with the mouse and all that sort of stuff, but I find like its functionality for the keyboard is not really very good. Like it doesn't really offer much for any of the key bindings besides like N will take you to the next image in the image viewer in your directory, which I guess is something. P will take you back one. It has evil keys, so H, I'm holding down H, L, J, K. Kind of what you'd expect. I think you can zoom in with equals. Yeah, there we go. Zooming in with equals, minus to zoom out. Now, there's a few features that I kind of wanted to show off just because I think they're pretty cool, but I don't really feel like it's easy to show you guys its functionality. But the cool thing, if you can find it, is it actually offers the ability to basically generate a QR code that you can show on your phone in order to pass files back and forth between your phone. Now, another thing that it has is a file manager. So EAF file manager. Now this is okay. I don't know. I don't really see much point in using it. For some reason, for me, it doesn't seem to like highlighting what I'm looking at, but it's got a very much like a Ranger sort of interface. I'm not super into it, but maybe you guys will be. I prefer just using DRED. DRED's been good for a long time. It also has a org previewer, a music player that I won't show off in this video. What else do we have here that I could show off? Jupyter Notebooks functionality. It has a mind map. So sometimes EAF can break on you launching a bunch of these different applications. Usually things get crossed. So you can do EAF restart process is one of the ways that you can do it. That often fixes it. Will it fix it this time? It's looking like it. Once this loads up, there we go. So we're back at the EAF homepage. This is the dark version of it since it finally started to use the dark version. Anyway, so it's got a lot of functionality. If you use Emacs already, I highly recommend taking a look at it. Super awesome, very simple, very powerful. The browser, easily the biggest selling point to me. It's got Markdown previewer, org previewer. You can actually preview HTML in an email. Show that part off, but it's pretty much as you'd expect. If you've got an HTML email, you can just do open mail as HTML, just in the email buffer, and it will open it for you. Pretty stable for the most part. Like I just showed an example of it breaking there, but besides that, it's been pretty functional for me. There you go. It's got some of the key bindings. You can go ahead and take a look at my config where I actually have a few key bindings set up because while it has the evil functionality built in, I find that to be more of a negative than a positive because I don't use evil keys anymore. Right now, I'm just kind of trying to play around with some other options. But the big thing that I think is a pain about it is that it often breaks a lot of the actual input fields because EAF won't realize that it's actually on an input field, and so it'll keep just acting as if those keys are to scroll. It doesn't really have a good understanding of insert and normal mode, so because of that, it gets really confused and it can be kind of a pain. If you're watching this and you're a developer, please make just a simple option to turn all those keys off so that way it's not really something I have to worry about. Anyways, guys, there's a lot of built-in functionality in Emacs and external ones that you guys could use as an alternative, and I kind of wanted to highlight those. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So if I just do... So there's a bunch of different functionality. Big one that I wanted to show off is that there's actually an FFmpeg package that allows you to watch videos in Emacs. PDF viewer comes built in with DocView, but DocView has a pretty big negative. So if we just go ahead and actually... So this is the actual EAF PDF viewer. And it's pretty speedy, pretty functional, and it also allows you to display multiple pages at the same time, which DocView can't really do. It also obviously upholds your theming, so this is giving me the dark version of the web page, of the PDF, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, so it offers an alternative there. Now going back, we also have the JavaScript video player, just mostly for, I think, playing videos in the web browser when you click on something. It also has an image viewer, which I showed off earlier, music player, which honestly I don't really see much point in. Like there's a lot of different options. There's MPC, which comes with Emacs, or EMMS, which is an alternative that you could use. System monitor, there's already ProcEd. Terminal, I think another terminal can't hurt if it does a better job. I haven't really played around with it enough to really know yet. Camera, maybe could be done with the FFmpeg video player, but I haven't actually tried that out. It could be done. And then mind map, honestly, I've not really found much use in it, but maybe you guys will. Org Roam has a similar functionality that you guys can play around with, so that's kind of it when it comes to the major selling points. You guys can go ahead and look at it. If I missed anything that you think is a great selling point, let me know. Anyways, guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed the time watching it. I hope you guys learned a decent amount, and I hope it exposed you guys to this really awesome Emacs package. And for those of you guys that don't use Emacs, that are kind of Emacs curious and wanted to see what it has to offer, well, here's one of Emacs's, in my opinion, killer features, being able to run a web browser within it. While at this point, I don't personally use it that much, because I use EXWM, the Emacs Window Manager. The functionality isn't super important, but I find I use it pretty often for things like viewing an HTML email or opening images. Sometimes it's useful. PDFs, it's useful. Video playback is sometimes pretty useful. All that sort of stuff, just being able to run it just as a buffer and not acting as its own thing, having its own special key bindings can be kind of nice to have. Anyways, guys, if you made it this far into the video, I really hope you guys are interested in subscribing. Be sure to like this video if you liked it. And if you want to see more of this, be sure to hit that bell icon so you guys will be notified of my next video. Finally, I just wanted to give a big shout out to my supporters on GitHub sponsors. I really appreciate it. Sorry that I haven't been able to get out any videos recently. Big reason is that I've just been moving a lot. Like right now, I'm literally in a cabin, which has made recording a big pain in the butt. As well as just constantly having to work with scheduling work and everything like that. Anyways, I'm sure you don't really, it's my issues, not yours, so you don't really need to hear about them. Anyways, I just wanted to give a big shout out to Brian Jenks and DFDX. Thanks a bunch for supporting me on GitHub sponsors. I once again really appreciate that. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video.